The COVID era really showed us, who's got hair on their arms. I mean, if you think about it, right, we lost a lot of friends and we gained a lot of new friends, and we learned a lot about the world around us. And in many ways, I feel like we're in a better place. I mean, would you go back to 2019 if you had the choice?
No, 2019 was very rough. That's why it worked. The reason that the COVID operation worked is because people were so stressed out and unhappy, really a treadmill feeling. People would really run ragged. And the lure, the bait of the bait and switch was, you get to take a little break. You get to breathe for a second. I didn't. I was on March 3rd. I was working on COVID-19 news. I started my daily publication and chronology 10 days before the emergency was declared, and then I was up till like 4 o'clock in the morning for the next 600 nights. But I got a good journalism assignment out of it.
Were it not for the whole era, the PSYOP, the operation, I wouldn't have met you.
Yes. Yep. And I'm happy to have lost the false friends. And, a lot of my clients bailed out, from my other business, bailed out. And I thought I was a better teacher than that. But, they were accusing me of things and of being a Trump supporter and, lying about killing grandma. And I'm like, you say you've been reading me for 15 years and I've always gotten it right. Maybe you should call me up, since my phone number is all over my website and I actually answer the phone. You should call me up and ask me what's going on. You can call me up and say, what's your problem, bro? I'll tell you.
This is a weird thing. You said now Trump supporter. And I remember a time many, many years ago where you could say openly, I like Obama, or I like Clinton, or I like whoever. It doesn't really matter. And you wouldn't lose friends over it. You might get into a bit of an argument, but you wouldn't lose friends.
Yeah, that. And though I tend to lean left in my politics, I have been the kind of person who leaned left, who always listened to what people from other viewpoints had to say, and that they respect that immensely. If you're a liberal who actually cares what they say, you're not a libtard. And anytime I've had a long and storied journalism career going back to 1983, and anytime I have been arrested for journalism, banished from a place, in any way censored or banned, it's always been liberals who have done it. Never once has somebody who allegedly had some opposite viewpoint of mine, which then you find out isn't so opposite when you actually parse it out. It's always been people on the left who just blatantly practice lockstep censorship or pillorying or wokeism or whatever. And that's been instructive. I think it's not indicative of a sound character.
Now, let me just categorically state, I have kind of given up on the labels thing, left, right, liberal, conservative, because I don't really know what they mean.
For the sake of discussion, I'm only saying it for the black pieces and white pieces in chess.
Yes.
You have to have, I mean, I love a chessboard with like purple and green. That must have that exists. But yes, it's become completely meaningless, I think. Though in the United States, there is this weird thing that thinks of itself as liberal movement, which flies the trans flag, which will try to correct your speech, which will accuse me of photographing models that are conventionally attractive. I once had one of these wokies
like that
in my
Sweeney.
studio.
Sorry.
What's that?
That's Sweeney. Have you seen that whole new thing now with those jeans? What's her name? Sweeney something.
She's so cute. That's what they're mad about. She's hotter than they are. That's all it is. She's got, what a little cutie. Jesus Christ. I downloaded my favorite of those images and I've got it at full resolution. Then I wrote to the ad agency with my Pacifica Network branding on my email saying, well, they're all pissed off, but I'm not. So I'm having fun with that. It's so absurd. Like they're actually claiming this is a neo-Nazi. If they think that's neo-Nazi, let me take you to Auschwitz. Let's take a walk through the mass graves at Buchenwald. I've been there. It had nothing to do with a cute girl with bare feet and bell bottoms. I'll take the girl with the bare feet and bell bottoms any day over Buchenwald.
Well, the point I was trying to make is that the whole left-right thing, yes, it does have a place. I think in general conversation, we kind of know what we mean when we say liberal or conservative. We do kind of have an idea. I've had the best conversations over the years with self-identified communists, for example.
Or yeah, when you get into the point of the conversation where it's like, well, what are your actual values? I wrote in my last column that sign of the times: cops are more interesting than hippies. This is just based on conversations. But I also think that prostitutes are the most interesting women to talk to. I've had some of the very
probably.
Then you get guys like Buckminster Fuller agreed with this. He's like the women he loves the most, the smartest women, some of the most intelligent, by which I mean general intelligence. They could keep up with anything that I would say have been prostitutes. So the labels are ridiculous, and but you need them to a point. But then, like, I've watched my positions on issues change, like abortion, for example, like feminism. Feminists convinced me that feminism was a lie. They by their behavior. And then I started to look into the concepts behind open access to abortion, and I started to disagree with those foundational principles. Now, there's a complicated issue, right? Because you have bodily autonomy.
And I think that's the beauty, though, of reality, as opposed to constant academia and theorizing. You know, when you just look at actually what's going on around you, and when you experience it, it does alter the way in which you perceive things. This is why I said to you earlier, I've had some of the best conversations with self-identified communists because I actually realized that
they tend to be intellectually advanced. If they've read Marx, I want to know what the hell they read. I haven't read Marx, but I'm very interested in what people who have read Marx have to say about Marx. It doesn't make me a Marxist, but there's a lot of very interesting critique of the problems we are experiencing now, AI being one of them. This is colonialism. We are in another stage of colonialism right now.
Yeah, you just created my segue. Because I wanted to ask you about AI. So let me just quickly premise it with the following. So I know we've chatted about this off air briefly. My position is nuanced on AI. So I have the view that technically, all right, it can't control us, it can't take over, because it's purely a set of algorithms designed with a purpose. It doesn't have a will or a desire. So it can't become human in the sense that it's going to think about things.
Yep.
However, that's where it ends. Because in the same way, like smartphones have taken over our daily lives, I think in the same way we will allow ourselves to be taken over in a sort of abstract way by AI. And I think you kind of agree with that.
Yeah, though my position is historically based and goes back to telegraph and the light bulb. So I saw your show the other week. That's why I wrote to you with those two guys. And look, they're solid. And I forget their names. And it was the best technical explanation I have seen. Although I'm now reading this, which is stunning. It's really, she's made. You could probably get her on the show. And had I not, see, my dad was a professor of communications, and so I was aware of the work of Marshall McLuhan when I was a kid. And when we watched TV at dinner, there was a microphone taped to the television. So we didn't just consume television. When you're growing up and your dad has a microphone taped to the side of the television, you know you're supposed to observe it. It's not just a thing that's just going to float through you like the Flintstones. So he recorded the news, and those tapes are gone. He's kept everything he's ever owned, and he doesn't have those tapes, which would be incredible to have. Little reel-to-reel, like 4-inch reel-to-reels. So, and not video, because there was no videotaping. And so I was aware of media theory very young, and I applied it as best I could. And then I met Andrew McLuhan, Marshall's grandson. And through Marshall, I met his father, Andrew's father, Eric. And so I have gotten to have many conversations with actual people in the McLuhan family. And Eric was Marshall's collaborator and assistant for more than 10 years. So I started to read in depth on McLuhan's theories. And he provides a map to the territory that we're in, but he could not. I know where he stood on computers. He couldn't foresee what we are having going on right now. He did not foresee them hallucinating, for example. But what he did say was that computers are LSD for the business community. We can't find this quote, but I have read this. I'm not sure what book I read it in. Computers are LSD for the business community. He said this in the 60s. And he believed they induce an out-of-body hallucinatory state. For those who've never done LSD, it's like you're living in a dream, basically. If you have good stuff by a good chemist, you're living in a subtle dream world. But you're waking. You can get up and go to the kitchen. You can get a cup of coffee, put it back on the table if you're so inclined. And that's what he said computers are doing to us. And all electrical technology has been regarded pretty much by any observing philosopher as something that basically shoves us out of body onto the astral plane. And this starts with telegraph, and it continues with telephone and the electric light. I don't think we've recovered from electric light as a technology advance. The world was dark at night and light during the day. And now, except like where I am, it is light all night. It's light all night.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And this completely changed our hormones, our social behaviors.
Yes.
It changed everything. And you couldn't stay up. Well, they had oil lamps. How I couldn't read
candles.
My oil lamp and candles. That's dangerous. And I couldn't do that. People get old. Their eyes aren't as good as when they're young. So how are you reading by oil lamps all night long? So most people were not. So they would go to bed. And the shocks. I mean, for example, the advent of feminism takes place with the Seneca Falls Convention 2 years after the first telegraph signal is sent. When you read the Seneca Falls Convention statement called the Declaration of Sentiments, every single statement is a lie, historically. Women can't go to college. That's a lie. Many colleges had opened for women. The leader of the conference was educated. Total lie. Women don't have money. No, the moneyed women were sitting right in the room. You could keep going. Women resigned from the human race 2 years after the telegraph sends its first signal. What hath God wrought? They blamed God for the telegraph. The first message telegraph was, what hath God wrought? The women resigned from the human race. The most astounding thing about the Declaration of Sentiments, which I mark as being contemporaneous with the telegraph, is it has never once mentioned children. They make this big statement about women, their rights, the way that men have enslaved them for all of eternity, and they never once mention children. Think about this. So the feminist movement begins with women resigning from motherhood. Well, who's going to raise the kids? Let's have a real conversation. I'm open to that conversation. Look, if I had a baby, as I'm sure you do, I'm sure you're up at night as much as your wife is. That you'll take care, if she's got to sleep, you'll take care of the kid all night. You got to talk to me, you'll come a little bit wrinkled. Fine. You know how to do this when you haven't slept, I'm sure. That might not have been the case. Well, but we forget that in 1912, everybody was up until all hours. The men were out milking the cows at 11 o'clock at night. It might have been 5 degrees outside. And they've got to milk the cows. Mama's putting the kids to bed. And then suddenly those are rural areas that are not impacted. And as electricity progressed, things got more and more insane, which is now where we are.
Right. So if I'm following you, Eric, what you're saying is that these big moments in history, these big events, have had significant existential impact on society, and electricity, for example, being one of them that we haven't quite recovered from, and AI being the next.
No, there have been a series. You could look at what happened with radio as a major turning point. Radio precipitates the world wars, 1 and 2. What one of the things McLuhan said is that people don't like this, but Gandhi, Hitler, and FDR all rose to power thanks to radio. So radio creates a tribalism. It unravels literacy overnight. It creates electrically tribalized people. And then you follow that through. And then by the 60s, we're under the full thrall of television. And then people are treating their lives like television programs, even though they didn't have television programs. You and I have little television programs, right? That was not true in the 60s. There wasn't even community access cable in the 60s, but people start acting like their lives are television shows in the 1960s under the influence of television. All the behaviors change.
Yeah. So in other words, these big events led to like a rewiring of the mind.
All social relations, the internal relationship, the years and the centuries of inner focus created by literacy were unraveled almost immediately in the early 20th century by radio. And then they're working on television in the 30s. Then the computer science is born in the 40s during World War II. And it was a very different thing. It was not digital, it was analog. And then in the late 40s, it's starting to go more digital, but very expensive. And this is changing people, but it's changing every social relationship. I mean, the phone. No one saw this and thought this is going to change every last social relationship that we're in. But it has changed every last social relationship. Now we carry a tracking device around. So now our position is being announced 24/7. It can be looked up. So one of the things electricity did was it completely destroyed privacy, the reality of privacy and the concept of privacy. But for example, a digital effect that we lived through was 2020. This is very important to understand that 2020 was not possible without digital conditions. I'm used to speaking in YouTube language. I call it the 2020 crisis. Because their algorithm is not on. They're not on to the 2020 crisis. They keep giving me strikes if I say virus or COVID. So those were digitized people. Digitized people fell for COVID. They fell for the software upgrade. That would not have worked in the analog world. They tried, meaning that there was an attempt there were several pandemic scares, including one in 68 and 69. And all the kids came to Woodstock. They couldn't frighten them with newspaper articles. And then I interviewed the principals of Woodstock, and really nobody cared. The germaphobe principal photographer, Elliot Landy, didn't even know or care about it. Michael Lang, the founder, didn't even care about it. I actually reached them directly in 2020 to do the story. And so the mere fact of COVID was not just created by the PCR. It was not just created by algorithms. It was greatly facilitated by robots invading social media. People are not realizing that all the censorship was AI. All the strikes were AI. Right? When you're taken off Facebook and 30 seconds, that's AI working. But the people were so porous from all this overexposure to digital that all you had to do was launch this, and suddenly they're terrified.
Yeah, I think I agree with you actually quite a lot, because on the one hand, you go, okay, cool, AI is a very helpful tool. And on the other hand, it blurs reality. My video gets taken down. Was it somebody at YouTube, or was it, a bot? And
the very high level people might have somebody at YouTube watching. The people with millions of followers, there might be some human intervention and ranking and demonetize. But for 99.9% of YouTubes, it's all algorithm. Facebook, it's algorithm that are policing it. It's looking for keywords. It's yeah.
But I mean, that's part of the danger then of AI, is that you don't know what is real anymore.
Including you. But what they're not talking about is how fast we are becoming like it. I don't hear anyone talking about this. That all technology environments condition humans essentially to be like them. So you following me here? Things are moving in two directions, but I'm not seeing any discussion of the other direction of movement. And the direction of movement is people starting to think algorithmically. Now, I'm seeing stories about people using AI words, like it's kind of jargony, and people are picking up on that jargon, which is one little clue. But it's much, much worse than that.
So where do you see it going?
Well, it is said that there is a layer of ash that covers the world. If you dig down anywhere, you'll find a layer of ash. We are going to have a creative layer of ash. What it's doing is it is shutting people down. Look, there's an article that was pulled off the internet from a Lilybit, the blog, a Lilybit Substack blog. I saved it. I saved a PDF of this. Thank God. She pulled it down. She did an analysis of how many teenagers are using companion chatbots as their girlfriend, something around half of people in the 18 to 24 range.
Yeah.
They're not out.
That's the danger.
They're not out. I was always the editor-in-chief, so I never had to really go anywhere to find girlfriends. I would just do my thing, publish the newspaper, sit in my office, and then all these artists and writers and production assistants would show up. Well, the fun of being an editor-in-chief all these years has always been the social environment around it. Besides my love of publishing, gone. That's gone. The whole concept that you would hang out with people, really hang out with people in groups and get close to them. And now you've got people who have already been alienated by these technologies, young people who grew up on them, and then suddenly they're feeding them a $12 a month chatbot that they think they love, or that's going to respond to them, because they're terrified of the girls. The boys are terrified of the girls. After the Me Too movement, which is one of my main objections, which they objected to, because I said, look, you can't tell me. My clients are calling me and they're worried about their 16-year-old sons who are afraid to ask a girl to the prom lest they be thought of as a sexual predator. When we confuse asking a girl to the prom with sexual predation, we're done. There's no predation in asking a girl out to the prom. It's the school puts the prom on. How are you going to have a prom? The boys are expected to ask the girls out and they're terrified. This has expanded into society. The boys have to have a little chutzpah to engage with these kind of mystical beings known as women. I mean, even if
they're checking out, Eric,
they're terrified.
Yeah, they're checking out.
They're checking out. Yes, and I think, unless they're very fortunate, lack the conversational skills to engage them, and the girls are making it hard. The girls are being conditioned also by this environment, and they are being, as they were made, they were dehumanized in the telegraph era. Not mentioning children, has this ever been written about in any feminist term paper ever? I'd love to do a search of the literature and see if anyone's ever done a doctoral thesis on this. To not mention children in the Declaration of Sentiments is colossal. And then this conditioning has proceeded through every stage of technology, conditioning the behavior and the thinking of everyone, but it's affecting men and women slightly differently.
But hang on. So it's not a counter argument that you're creating. You're sort of creating an addendum.
I'm taking an environmental position. I'm taking a ground field. I'm looking at the ground field, not the figure of, ooh, this cool chatbot, or how does this technology work? Is GPT 1, 2, 3, or 4? Sam Altman, Bill Gates, you know.
But Eric, then are you not suggesting, therefore, that this is just a consequence of progress?
Well, it is. It is a consequence.
And therefore, is there moral judgment that is required to be attached to it? Like, is it a good or bad thing, or is it just a thing?
Well, okay. So, again, referencing McLuhan, who was always very careful to try to avoid moral judgment. But he also didn't see what we're seeing. When you start to have half of young people absorbed in their phones, not even chatting with each other, but chatting with a machine, an algorithm, thinking that it's a person, and then it's making them like an algorithm. And when you see the birth rate going down, and when everyone's terrified of everyone else, it's no longer a moral judgment. It's a judgment of like, there is poison and the animals are all dying. You can't say, well, it's just poison. You know, it's just a molecule. Who get a little dioxin? You know, it's a molecule like any other. It actually is not.
So your addendum then to the discussion is that while AI itself isn't going to take over, people are actually making it take over.
Them. People are taking over people's minds.
And they're allowing it.
Well, yeah, but it's so tempting to, like, do you play a musical instrument?
I do.
What do you play?
I've got a couple guitars.
Okay, so we've been down this road, right? You know, the cowboy C chord, for some reason my hands could not make that chord. I can make a lot of chords. So I had to really want to learn how to do that. You have to sit there and you have to put in time and hours. I could afford to take 4 guitar lessons a week for a while. I started at age 47, and my teacher, of course, was happy to come over every night and teach me. And I'm like, give you food and money. Let's work. And now you just basically, you can make up whole songs pushing buttons. The people are lazy, and there's a lot of things like that. I mean, to write, when we're done, I have a major writing project due in about a week and a half. I've got like 18,000 words left to write. I mean, I'm going to sweat to do that and do it well. Well, I'm willing to do that. I've put in my time. I have a unique talent as a writer, but that's because I write 250,000 words a year. That's my at least that much.
Well, on AI, you can create a whole song in a space of 60 seconds.
Yeah. Yes, and I forget which presenter did a takedown of it. He's one of these music producers who does a podcast, and he did the song on the air, and he composed it on the air, and he could. But it's total cliche, and you realize how much of other culture is total cliche. But the problem is that has worsened under digital conditions. So AI is an extension of digital conditions given a name. We've all been interacting with AI using Google, for example, all the way back to the beginning. There's a theory that all digital technology is AI, which I agree with. I think that when you use a pocket calculator, not that they exist anymore, that's a form of AI. Doing division? Who can do division? Who can divide like uneven numbers or square roots? Can you do factorials? I don't know, maybe, but that's a form of AI, to take a human mental function that you would have to train to be able to do this kind of long division and have it done in 1 second. That's a form of AI.
You mentioned playing guitar earlier. You were talking about a C chord. I just play a power chord because I'm lazy.
Sure. Well, but that's okay. But that's a solution. And you know that gets a certain sound. Whole bands have made their sound up on power chords, like the whole 90s. Basically, it's power chords.
every punk song ever.
Yeah, sure. And they're great. But that's the reason that they're great. So here's an example. There's this thing called the Boiler Room series. And who are these two Asian kids? Yoko Kokomichi or something, these two Japanese kids. I'm tuning into this, and I work with a tech who's half my age. And we don't really have many cultural meeting places. But I saw this thing one night, and I sent it to him. I'm like, you got to fucking see this. And he writes back and says, oh, that's like my favorite thing ever. And I said, wait, you're telling me that this thing that I think is like the greatest thing since Brian Eno is your favorite DJ set? He's like, yeah, totally nonplussed. I'm excited by this. And then the conversation proceeds the next day. And he reveals this concept that you could just get an algorithm to do that. Are you familiar with the Boiler Room sets? I'll send a link so we can link to it in the notes. They're raves basically, and they're in like weird places, and they set up. They must get permission. They set up all the gear, and these two young guys have a lot of excitement around them. And the people, they are absolutely enraptured by what they're doing, but there is also the beauty of the moment, the human moment that could never be created by an algorithm. Nobody would care. And these two guys are like marathon DJs working in total coordination, two different minds in total. And it's not DJ like mixing one song into another. It's this whole original thing. It's spontaneous creation of electronic music with rehearsed parts and pre-written parts, and then they mix it into this thing that's never, ever happened before, that cannot get that kind of love and passion in the room with an algorithm doing that. So the human factor is very important, but it ceases to be important when we no longer want it.
But Eric, you're just a Luddite.
Ha! I'm not a Luddite. You should see where I'm sitting. I'm a Luddite. I love this technology. I think it's amazing. I love it. But I am here 90% of the time. I'm creating something in this technology, and that's the only antidote.
Yes. Hang on.
Yeah,
that's the key word. You said I'm creating something. And I think that pretty much is the undertone or the undercurrent of this entire conversation. It's about creativity and creation, which is what AI ultimately is destroying.
Yep. Totally destroying it. That's the layer of ash that will cover the earth. I accept that these technologies all transform us. They work us over completely, but this is different. This article, and I'm sure you can post a link to the PDF. I'll put it up. I'll host it on my website, so I'll take the heat if we get in trouble.
Is it different, though? Because I remember in the 90s, sorry for interrupting, but I remember in the 90s when people said, this internet thing, this is not good.
It's caused a lot of problems. We didn't need it. And the phone, look, I ran I had a fabulous photo project called the Book of Blue, and I started in Paris, and then I went to Belgium, and then I came to New York with it. And I watched the models start to slowly go insane as the iPhone took over their minds. Their whole concept of their mind-body relationship made it plainly dangerous. And so what it's doing is it is distorting our relationship to our bodies. Have I read this quote on your show the last time we did it? Let me read this quote. The body everywhere is assaulted by all of our new media, a state which has resulted in deep disorientation of intellect and destabilization of culture throughout the world. In the age of disembodied communication, the meaning, significance, and experience of the body is utterly transformed and distorted. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's profound.
Profound.
But Eric, I don't know how to put this into words. Let me try and hope that you can follow. What he is saying and what you and I are effectively doing here is we are offering a sort of a perma critique, like this perpetual criticism of progress.
No, because the people who perpetuate it never care about the negative consequences. And now I think they're exploiting the negative consequences. When you have Musk talking about going to Mars, right? You know where his mind is at. What is motivating these people is immortality.
Yes. Transhumanism.
They think that when they'll get a new body, they'll have it's going to be like The Simpsons. Richard Nixon had his head in a jar. That's prescient. And it's not predictive programming. They're just smart people. So the progress is driven by profit. It's not driven by helping people. And they make the case early in AI, oh, this is all going to be about the mission. We're going to save you. Well, wait a second. We've just lived through like 30 years of fracking, pumping hydraulic fluid into freshwater wells. Remember, freshwater is 1% of the water on the planet. Most of it's held in the ice caps, which are melting. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it's climate change or not, the glaciers are melting. They're retreating. The water's running into the ocean. And so we've got a very small percentage of water. Well, AI consumes huge amounts of water. Forget about, what it's doing to people's minds and hearts. It is burning water. And then where are we going to get the electricity? Well, you've got both Gates and Zuckerberg contracting nuclear power. So 5 years ago, it was green. And now it's like, we must have electricity. They didn't have enough electricity. They didn't know how they were going to solve it for the electric car. And now they're talking about, I forget which one of these moguls, it may have been Musk or one of these big guys, said 20% of the world's power is going to go to AI. But why? Why do we need this? We don't need it. They need it. Then let's talk about the tracking, the tracing, the surveilling. I'm editing a thing called Ice9 News now. I'll give you a link to it. It's a daily AI news compilation. Just so someone's preserving these articles. We're preserving like 30, 40 articles a day on this thing. We're up to probably 600 or 700 articles. Well, now they've got a thing where you can walk into a room with Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi can automatically on the system tell who you are without any biometrics based on things like bone density and your heartbeat. So this is about a total surveillance state.
But also, to be fair, a lot of AI, like the LLMs, for example, are utter rubbish. I mean, they, on the one hand, are very good at, let's say you want to ask something to do with coding. But anything beyond that, they're completely useless. I mean, Grok,
even that they're useless for. They can't really, we don't respect the beauty of human ingenuity. The beauty of an ordinary, person down in their basement with like a drill bit and several parts, and they're going to fix the frickin' boiler. Using what they've got on the spot. Right? I don't know if you're a fan of the film Apollo 13, which probably didn't happen, but my favorite scene is where they've got the guys floating out in interplanetary space, and they recreated.
Is that the one with Tom Hanks? Have I got it wrong?
I think so. I'm not that big on Holly. It could be, but it's the one where they have an accident. There's an oxygen condenser blows up, and they're floating around space. One of my favorite scenes in all of cinema is they've got the Grumman guy sitting around a table, and they've recreated the problem in the next room. They know exactly what they've got on board that spacecraft. They've got some tape, they've got some square pegs, they've got some round holes, they've got like parts of other old oxygen condensers. And the guy walks into the room with the engineer sitting around the table, and he dumps all the parts onto the table and says, you guys have an hour and a half to make an oxygen condenser out of this garbage. That's human ingenuity. I've got the notebooks of Da Vinci. Da Vinci invents the helicopter with a charcoal and paper. He invents single element typing. Right? That's the thing. The IBM thing. You don't have the little type basket. Da Vinci, long before anybody was capable, thought of single element typing. We do not need humanity needs to solve its own problems, not make bigger problems. And there's nothing pure about these guys. This is massively driven by the whole thing is capitalized. It like the capitalization, according to Empire of AI, this book I'm pointing at here, the capitalization went, I think just this year went up $8 trillion. Increased these it's just all this gold rush. It's got nothing to do with us. This is about crushing us with central bank digital currencies and with a smart, which are smart, which are every dollar is pegged with coding and tagging and what you can and can't buy and where you can and can't. That's what this is about.
I was just reminded now when you mentioned Apollo 13. Just on that quickly, my favorite moon landing movie actually ever is a recent one that came out by Apple. Have you seen it? It's called Man on the Moon.
I have not.
I think about a year ago. Listen, I highly recommend it.
Is it historical? Is it? It's about looking back at one, or is it about a new mission?
No. It's looking back, but it's got such a great twist. It's very original. Okay. So let me put it like this: the assumption is that the moon landing is real, right? That's the premise of the movie. Fine,
sure,
because it's a mainstream movie.
Within the premise, so let's work within the premise and say
you have to work within the parameters. But here's what I liked about it. It stars a couple good actors, Woody Harrelson being one of them. He is a character who basically was this clown, this conspiracy theorist who argued that it didn't happen, it wasn't going to happen, and he was in charge of setting up the secret filming, the secret production of the landing itself, which is what was going to be played on TV. Now, the fact is that it doesn't matter that he's made to look cuckoo. The point is that they actually entertained the idea, which I thought was great.
Right. In a modern context, they entertained the idea that the photography was fake. And
they brought in Stanley Kubrick. That whole aspect of the moon landing.
So here's my theory about that. And he did indeed borrow f/.9 lenses or something like that. These like $25,000, whatever, God knows how much lenses to film to 2001. But Kubrick was the cinematic genius of them all. And if Kubrick filmed the moon landing, if he made that up as a movie, he put in every conceivable photography error into the moon landing to make it blatantly obvious that it had to be fake, like two light sources and the shadows going the wrong way. And Kubrick was more than qualified to be able to insert those errors, including the Coke bottle. So to say that Kubrick shot that, the only way that you can make that work is, he was flipping it to NASA, and he's like, eventually people will be sophisticated enough to look at it. And people doubted it at the time. But think of how destabilizing this all is. Like, we live in the midst of this instability. We live in the midst of this chaos. We live in the midst of the time when boys are afraid to ask girls out to the prom. God damn, it's hard enough without that. It's hard enough without that. It's hard enough when you can ask a girl out to the prom.
How's AI or our technological progress going to, in any way, fix that?
It's not. No, when you've got 52% of kids, and I will send you this article the minute we're off, called, am I allowed to use 4-letter words?
Yes.
It was a Lily Bit. It's the blog Lily Bit on Substack. It's called Fucking Ourselves to Death. And she pulled it down. It was one of the most blistering, incredible investigative features I've ever read in my entire life. And it was only up for a few days. And I read the thing into my show on Friday night, which I love to do. And then I sent it to a friend last night, and she said, the link is not working. She had pulled it down by Sunday. And it talks about the sledgehammer that this is taking to young people's relationships. Look, I'm old, and I know how to flirt with a woman and have it not seem like I'm flirting. Right? That's beautiful. I love your earrings. Right? You're not calling attention to like nipples. You're like, I love your earrings. I love the way your shoes match your. Right. This is a legit way to flirt, right? Or you just talk about anything and say, I read a book lately. What book have you read? once that level of and people are terrified to go off script. They were terrified to go off script 10 years ago. They're terrified to go off script. Flirting made impossible because there's always a little off script in flirting, right? And flirting's a very important level of human interaction. We have to get to like each other. We have to kind of feel each other out and check the vibes and see, like, do I like the way this person looks at me?
My wife made a great comment a couple of years ago, actually now. But we were in a group of friends. We were with a group of friends, and they were chatting about exactly what you're talking about now. How guys they're now checking out, and they don't want to make these moves. Things like buying a drink, for a girl in a bar, like the old school type of stuff, and catcalling, being whistled at. My wife said, "You know what? Like, what's wrong with being whistled at?" She said, "Now nobody wants to whistle at me." And she's like, "That sucks."
And you see good enough? Women complaining that the guys aren't catcalling. But this is the feminism. The guiding rule of feminism is heads I win, tails you lose. That's how. So you can't be listening to feminists. And I also think that the girls are in some ways smarter than the boys. I think. I'm not saying
in many ways.
In many ways there are, and to be a man, you have to catch up with that. You have to master that game. But what's happening is that for the boys who first of all, who like the girls, and I realize there's less and less to like, but still, I will forever like women. I just kind of like women. It's got nothing to do with anything except they're like female, and I like female. For the boys who like female, this is kind of like the game. It's their game, because you go to college now. The majority of college students are women. It's like, I'm waiting for the guy to say, "Yeah." The majority of the college students are women. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? What's
men that? Actually, I think in the main are dumber than women. I think this is a reality that we don't really want to accept
in a certain way.
Well, I mean, if you
designing the Lincoln Tunnel.
Well, even if you plot it on a bell graph, right? Men are more extreme than women, which is, I think that's probably correct, and that's probably how it should be. This is why you have men who make films like Jackass, where they will film each other riding bicycles down a road into a tree and then laughing about it. But women look at that and they go, "That's stupid. Why would you want to do that?"
Yeah, but they do other suicidal things. Like,
we find it hilarious. That's also why the best chefs are men, and why the fastest are men, and why the strongest are men, because we do extreme things.
Women, we have determination.
Yes.
We have the ability to focus on something and not stop until it's done. Panama Canal. I mean, read the story of the Panama Canal. They had to build a freaking canal over a mountain range. This is not like dig a trench between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Oh, look, there's an isthmus. Dig a trench. No, they had to float. This is why when I learned that, I didn't understand that. Once I heard that, I'm like, do they have Panama Canal cruises? I got to see this. You mean you can get on a boat and you can have the boat lifted over a mountain by water? That's what men do. And we need that. All civilization is men. We had a car hit a tree here and knock down the power pole. I knew my power was going to be out. So I went back a couple of times. And then finally I went back and I stayed for the last 3 hours with the crews who were sorting out this mess. There were no women. It was a bunch of guys, and they had to re-drill. This is an ordinary workaday repair. They had to put a new pole in. They had to drill through rock. They had to mount a new transformer. They had to sort all these. It was a complete, well, that's dudes.
But that's actually, I mean, I've covered this a couple times on my show, Eric, and you're preaching to the converted, because what feminism has done, it has ruined gender roles, and that's a very unpopular opinion, but it really is the truth.
Intentionally so.
We do actually have roles that we are just simply better at, and of course, there's lots of crossover and all that sort of thing, and
sure.
No one's actually arguing that, but there are essential roles that we do best at, and we need to also just be honest with ourselves about it.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean there are not some transcendent mathematical geniuses among women and transcendent engineers, but usually guys are drawn more to that. I'm a little odd in that, like, growing up, I was equally into women's crafts and men's crafts. I had my Remington book. I wanted my 12-gauge shotgun, and I was also interested in how that sewing machine works. And it wasn't like I wanted to make clothing. So there's the engineering angle of that. But the women in my family were all very good seamstresses. And then I'm realizing, oh, this is architecture. It's not really that easy to make a dress, to cut the fabric, to sew all. You got to be pretty damn smart.
But now you can do it with AI.
Yeah, sure. You can have a three-dimensional printing, and you just go Command P, and it spits the dress out of your polyester printer.
But you're going to get a very subpar result.
Yeah. Well, because a dress is art as well as architecture. It's art. It's art. So we're going to lose that. But what I'm more concerned about is the loss of the aesthetic sense. That's the problem. It's not so much the computers are doing things. It's the loss of the aesthetic sense.
Creativity.
But the sense, to sense the creativity, to feel the beauty of writing. No, like I'm always reading a book. This book has me absolutely riveted by the quality of her writing, and she's spending the first 10 pages explaining the interview and fact-checking process. I'm like, you got me. I know exactly what you're talking about. We're in the same business. You follow me? So I'm like in love with her because, plus I've seen her in a lot of interviews, but now it's like, oh, the Sapio part of my mind is like, holy shit, she is fully dedicated onto the story 5 years before. That I love that with passion.
It's interesting what you're saying also, because that extends into so many other facets. You were talking, I mean, right now you're holding a pen.
Pencil.
And I often joke
Pencil.
about
an old-fashioned pencil with an eraser. Because I
often joke about this though when someone says, can you write it down? You go, well, what is paper and what does it do?
Yeah.
Because we write everything down now on our phone or our tablet.
Well, let me give you an example. Now, you know that I'm an astrologer, and I don't blame you for wondering what that means. But my charts look like this. Or I draw them, or I draw on them like this. Everyone's an original piece of artwork. So there's art and architecture in here. It's both. And so there's mathematics involved, and then there's intuition involved. But I encourage my students to print the thing and completely make it your own work of art. So I sell chart sets. I put in multiple copies so you can screw it up. I put in the blank wheel. Most people are just staring at the computer screen. I think it's a completely different experience. To be staring at a screen, to be doing this sublime, intuitive thing that, by the way, goes back to the era of music theory and the alphabet 2,500 years ago.
It's like reading a book versus reading a Kindle.
Yeah, I can't stand reading Kindles. I print out many articles also. I'd much rather read off the printed page. It gets unwieldy after a while. My printer, I did a test. I printed 43,000 pages on I have two of them. And one of them informed me I had printed 43. Wow, that's a lot of reams of paper. That's 20. It's like, how many reams? 25 reams of paper, basically. No, much more than that. Anyway, the involvement of digital, it totally sucks you in. As a user. Now, we're completely involved with each other. We've built a relationship over time. We've designed our studios. We've refined our craft and all this stuff. The people watching, some obviously are going to be broadcasters, but they're on the other end of that creativity. And digital and AI encourage being a consumer and not a creator. The creation is... No one would have ever imagined you could fit an entire van of equipment into this. This is Kurt Vonnegut, by the way, who saw it, who knew the problems we were going to be having. This would have taken a truck easily. Just the darkroom, the recording studio, There's a recording studio in there, a dark room, basically a post office, a printing press. Who could have imagined that?
Okay, Eric, I'm looking at the time. Give me a closing thought, a nugget of wisdom.
The most important thing we must not sacrifice to this technology is our relationships. Our willingness to be vulnerable, our willingness to talk to each other and be truthful with each other. And then right along with that is our ability to make art, our ability to find ourselves through the work that we do, to process the terrible things that happen on this planet to us through the creative process. If we keep going on this trajectory, we will lose each other and we will lose ourselves. And that's why I'm concerned. That's what has me concerned.
And also how to wear cool glasses like you.
They're just my reading glasses. 10% tint. But they look cool on video.
They do. They kind of got that Bono vibe.
And I squint. He has glaucoma. That's why he wears glasses.
Does he really? Is that just an image thing?
That's what the glasses are for. That's what the sunglasses are about. Yeah. And for me, I just tint my reading glasses, and I squint a lot, and I squint into I don't really pop my eyes open. You're good at the eyes wide thing, so it kind of shields me from that a little bit. The fact that I squint a little bit.
Okay, Eric, how can I follow you?
2 Substacks. Planetwaves.substack and planetwavesfm.substack. Is that clear enough? Planetwavesfm.substack and planetwaves.substack. The news and technology and politics is more on planetwavesfm.substack, and the astrology stuff is at planetwaves.substack. And there's a lot of overlapping between them. My program is called Planet Waves FM, and the shortest way to get there is planetwaves.fm.
That's good enough. Eric Coppolino, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Jeremy.